Hi, this is the 5th video in my series of videos on living aboard. It's going to be kind of noisy, the wind's picked up, so you might hear some slapping around in the background, but hopefully it's not too loud on the camera. It's not that loud to me, but sometimes the camera picks up weird noise and makes it far worse than it actually is. So anyway, first thing I would have done differently is basically when I was looking at a boat, I was more concerned about the sailing ability and weatherworthiness of the actual boat, and I didn't really put much emphasis on what it was actually like to be below decks. And for most people that buy boats, that's probably the right thing to do, because really you're not spending much time down below. You're spending it all up on deck, sailing it like you're supposed to. Well, when you're living aboard, that kind of gets turned around. Now, you still need to be comfortable sailing the boat, and you need to be able to look after it that way. But your living space on the boat is very important, and it's probably actually more important. You can certainly make some sacrifices in the boat's abilities and just kind of control what you do with it and have more comfortable living space and enjoy it more. And saying that, I probably wouldn't have bought a center cockpit catch, which is basically a double mast with one of the masts being kind of right in the cockpit. If you watch my walkthrough video that I'll probably have posted right after this one, I think this is going to be the last video in the series. If 5 videos ain't going to cut it, then I'll just probably amend them in part B's or something like that if I need to say more. But anyway, the next video will show that my basically the steering wheel is mounted to the mast step. This is a center cockpit catch is great for handling, particularly in light winds if you want to still be able to do a decent speed. And it's a very dry cockpit. It tends to be up high. If your seas are running from behind you, your cockpit is still nice and dry because you got that whole aft cabin kind of protecting your cockpit behind you. There's the whole fact that 2 masts is better than 1. If you have a problem with 1 mast, you still have 1 active if it's set up the right way. So there are advantages to having a center cockpit catch, but as far as living space, it's by far a detraction. Now, on a larger boat, when there's a walking space under the cockpit into the aft cabin, that's different. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's usable living space then. Problem I have is with mine is, in order for me to reach the rear cabin, is I have to go up in the cockpit out in the weather and then down into it, and it's very small. It's hard to see from the video walkthrough because my camera's not really good for it, but it's really compact. It's basically a good spot for a couple kids to sleep, and it's like basically a pup tent kind of thing, but kind of more cramped in its own way. So it's not really usable space other than for storage, and I use it as a reloading room. If you watch my other videos, I do target shooting and such, and I like to reload my own ammo. And so all my stuff like that is done in that aft cabin. Which is, you know what, it's fine. I'm making use of it. But I would quite willingly trade off that space and have that space move forward into this living area I have, and have that much more room in here, plus more storage room in this forward section. And a sloop design would be that trade-off. So that I definitely would do different. Another thing I may pay more attention to is making sure the boat I purchased had all the lines run to the cockpit. Mine aren't, and it's kind of expensive, and it's just going to be a pain in the neck to try and do it. It's going to require a lot of work to my Dodger, among other things, which is like your plastic windshield kind of thing, if you're not familiar with the terms. And all the deck hardware and so on and so forth to get my main sail sheets, and which are the lines, basically the ropes, get them run to the cockpit so I can control it from the cockpit. And it's going to be a major pain to do it. And I really should have bought a boat that already had all that set up. It would have just required me to be a little bit more patient in picking out a boat. I didn't put that much thought into it. Likewise, if you can at all possibly, make sure your boat has an auto helm. I do have an auto helm on my boat, but it's a very old version. It's basically this motor with a long belt that goes on a loop on the wheel, and it just kind of hangs there, and you kind of got to step around it or whatever. And it's functional, but it's not very reliable. I wouldn't rely it for a long trip. There's newer auto helms that are built basically right into the boat. I would consider that as a definite big plus, and I would look for that, particularly on a boat you're going to single handle. You know what? If I had gotten lines all run to the cockpit, auto helm may not have been as big of a necessity, but because my lines aren't run and I don't really have a good auto helm, it's kind of a pain. And as such, I don't really use my mainsail very much. Another thing I would have done differently is I would have looked after my insulation right away. It didn't even occur to me to consider insulation when picking out a boat. Well, which is kind of stupid really when you think about it, because when you pick a house, you're always checking the insulation. Well, same goes for the boat, and depending on your climate, you may need more or less. And likewise, your window openings, if you're somewhere tropical, which I don't have a ton of experience with, because it really doesn't get that warm here. The warmest ever gets here is 25 degrees Celsius, and I'm quite comfortable in that temperatures with just a few things open and jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm fine. The temperature of the ocean kind of mitigates the heat of the sun on the top, and I'm quite cool in here. I'm quite comfortable. That being said, in a different environment, I would want the salon windows and the forward V-berth cabin windows to the ability to open, and that would be very important if it was really warm. And the sea was likewise nice and warm too. So that's another thing you want to think about. And as I was saying with the insulation, I did have insulation. It wasn't so much a problem with heating the boat, but it was the moisture buildup. Any of the exposed surfaces of the hull to the outside air or the sea, anywhere there was an insulation, it would just bead moisture like you would not believe. There was water pooling in all of these storage compartments and so on and so forth. It was a mess. Huge mess. Once I got insulation in, you know what? Cheap fix. Excuse me there. It was a cheap fix. It was easily looked after. But it would have been much easier if I hadn't have had all my stuff on the boat and had done it prior to me moving on to the boat. Obviously I was able to do it, but it took me darn near a week to get it done, whereas it would have been a day or two tops to do it without all my stuff on the boat. So something to consider. Another thing I should have done differently is actually spent more time just hanging out, bumming around on the boat, relaxing, chilling out, and spent about a week living on it, and kind of got an idea of what I could or couldn't do with the layout. There are aspects of the layout I don't particularly like on this boat, and I probably would have been far better served picking up a Catalina 30 or CNC 30. Both those boats would have been a little more inexpensive than this boat and would have had way more to offer. And they probably would have been a better choice for what I'm doing. And you know what, honestly, while they're maybe not as blue water capable as this boat, not by any stretch, they're perfectly fine for the sailing I do. And they're way more agile for bringing the boat in tight conditions. And both those, because of the length of this boat is physically, it's actually over 34 feet long. I need a 40-foot slip. I can't fit into the 30-foot slips. With other two boats, I could have been in the 30-foot slips, which have all the same great stuff that this slip has, but they're a 30-foot slip, so they're more than $100 a month cheaper, and I would have had the same living space and a more agile boat. So really, I should have done that differently. So don't get wrapped up thinking a bigger boat is necessarily a good thing, like I did. And I think I pointed that out in my other videos, that don't get wrapped up too much on the size of the boat, and I partly made that mistake myself. Anyway, I think that's about it for my points. As a side note, I'm going to mention a few things, just kind of obscure things I've learned. When you redo your septic system, make sure you use a good quality 2-inch septic line. It's the black rubber stuff. It may not visibly, it may look kind of industrial, like you can see the lettering on it and stuff. It's not like that, the white stuff, which actually kind of looks nice. The white stuff, seriously, after a year, 2 years, it just it stinks. It smells like an open septic tank. The stuff just reeks. The black rubber stuff with the double wire braid inside it, it doesn't, the smell won't leach into the rubber. It's much more resistant. It might in 10 years, hard to say, but the white stuff, after it's a year old, you can smell it. And your whole boat's going to smell like that all the time. And if you're shopping for a boat and the boat's been closed up for a week or two, and you step on board the boat and it's kind of got that off smell, go look in the head, and if you see that white plumbing, that's where the smell is from. And you know what, just lower your nose up to it and take a whiff. You'll know what I'm talking about. And you can get rid of that smell. Just change those lines, get those things out of there, and put the good quality black rubber ones in. Quite a bit more expensive. It's like pretty much $1 an inch, but it's worth it, because who wants to live in a house that smells like a reek of a septic tank? So that's one pro tip. Another pro tip is the most common bilge pumps, Rule and Whale, aren't very good. I'm a very strong proponent of Atwood, if you can find them. I ran both a variety of Rule and Whale bilge pumps in my bilge, and my bilge gets used a lot because my shower actually drains into my bilge. Not a good design, but that's the way it is. I won't go into details about it, but you know what, not a big deal. Just your bilge pump is, every day you run a shower, that bilge pump kicks on and deals with all that water. And that water's soapy, hairy, whatever. I don't have too much hair, so not a huge deal, but that will eventually get into that bilge pump. That Atwood bilge pump has been running for a couple years. I went through 3 different Whale and 2 different of the other ones before I hit on the Atwood, and the Atwoods worked great ever since. So I promptly changed my other 2 bilge pumps to Atwood, and I swear by them now. And they are actually kind of an inexpensive option. So the guys at Atwood, good work. The guys at Rule and Whale, for a safety item on a boat, come on, it's supposed to be able to handle a volume of water. And you know what, if you're going to charge a premium for your bilge pumps, at least make sure the things work more than once. Very disappointed, as you can tell. I'm a big proponent of the Dickinson propane heater. It's not as good as the drip diesel forced air, but it's kind of a mid-range price alternative, and it's got the added advantage that you can actually see the flames. It's like a wall-mounted fireplace. The ambience it lends to your cabin is just awesome. Most of my heat is looked after by electrical. If it gets really cold, I'll run this, or if I'm out cruising and I'm on the hook and I just need a little bit of heat, this thing works great. And this is the larger, I think it's the 1200 or something like that. I would consider this adequate for up to a 34-foot boat. Now, if your boat's got a bunch of separate compartments that there's a long hallway between them, this isn't going to work. It only works for a open space or whatever. That being said, it's perfectly effective on this boat. My V-berth, yeah, it gets a little cool in there, but it's not bad. There's enough airflow through that passageway over here that it's fine. Not a big deal. I do have a fan I can run to get air circulation, but I don't usually use it. It's kind of an annoying sound. This thing is kind of noisy if you got it cranked up, but you can kind of keep it toned down to a dull roar, and it doesn't bother me at all. The exhaust is kind of interesting. The actual exhaust is a 1-inch tube that runs inside this 3-inch flexed stainless flex. So the exhaust is run right in the middle of this tube, and then this tube is the cold air intake, and it just circulates all on its own from the heat. As the hot air goes up, it draws in the cold air into this chamber. So it's not using your cabin air to run the flame in there, so you're not burning your oxygen up. Now, you still need ventilation, of course. It's a boat. Ventilation is always a very, very good idea. But this is just gives you an added safety where you're not burning the oxygen in your cabin. It's pulling it in from the outside air. And likewise, this doesn't get extremely hot. This, if you grabbed it and held on to it for a while, you would hurt yourself. But if you just grab it like that, it would be like, oh, that's hot, and you let go. Because there is the cold air coming in to kind of moderate the temperature of it. So it's a nice, safe way of handling open flame on a boat. And likewise, there's an inner chamber here that's built in, and then there's this outer box that's built around it. So this doesn't get very hot. Even when the fan's running, this top part will get hot, but right up to about this level, it'll be cool to the touch. It'll just feel like you're touching normal metal or whatever. It doesn't get hot at all, which is why I got cushions right up against it. No big deal. And that's even with the fan, without the fan running. It doesn't transmit the heat down. Really good design. There's a high-low setting for the flame. I always just leave it on low. High, just, you know what? Even on low, if I leave it on for a while, it gets too hot in here. Even when the one night I turned it on, it dipped below -11. I don't know how cold it actually got, but it was below -11 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. You guys will have to figure that out if you want to know. But it's a ways below freezing. And I woke up and my electronic heater had kind of lost ground. It wasn't keeping up. It was pretty chilly in here. I could see my breath. So I turned this on and it warmed up fairly shortly, and I went back to sleep. And even on low, I think I was only asleep for about a half hour, and I woke up and it was freaking hot in here. So it's something you're going to need to run for a little bit and then turn it off. And you don't need to run it constantly for very long. If you run it for any length of time, you'd be sweating yourself out of a 30-some-odd foot boat. So it is very effective. And I like it. It's very nice ambience. What other little pro tips do I have before I go here? I think that pretty much covers it. I could very well do a separate little video review of this and the Atwood bilge pumps. Maybe some of the plumbing stuff. And that's it for now, I guess. I think I've blathered on enough. If you have any questions or comments or whatever, leave them in the comments below. And I will try to address them either just by, if it's something small, just reply to your comment by text. But if it's something significant, I'll amend video footage with more stuff. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video, or at least find it useful, and have yourself a good day.